We shall see. I don't count on me, okay? Thank you. All right, I think the chatter has calmed. Are we online, ready to go, Catherine?
Yes, we are.
We are. Okay, thank you. I think I will go ahead and call this September 21st Municipal Planning Commission meeting to order. We have some councillors, some MPC members missing today, so I would entertain a motion to excuse them from the meeting. Ellen moves to excuse Greg, Lynette, and Dan from our meeting. All in favor of that motion? That is carried. All right, the minutes from our last meeting, September the 7th, they're in your package. How do you wish to handle them? Holly.
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns? All in favor of Holly's motion? That is carried then. Adoption of the agenda. Our agenda is laid out here for us. Are there any additions to the agenda, edits? Nothing from staff. A motion to adopt. Amanda? Thank you. All in favor of Amanda's motion? That is carried. Subdivision 6.1, Maria, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just pull this up. Okay, this subdivision application 2023-0-011 is to subdivide an approximate 0.96 hectare, 2.37 acre parcel from the northeast of 72115, which lies south of the north 430 feet of the quarter section for residential purposes. The proposed subdivision is located 2.4 kilometers northeast of the village of Rosemary. Access to the proposed subdivision would be from Range Road 155. Access to the remnant parcel would have to be established from that same road. A letter has been submitted from a certified septic installer stating that the proposed subdivision is suitable for a private septic disposal system that meets the Alberta Safety Code. The Subdivision Authority bylaw states that the Subdivision Authority may approve one additional subdivision on the residual quarter section within an agricultural general land use district, provided that the parcel is between 1.21 hectares and 2.83 hectares. So that's between 3 and 7 acres. However, this parcel size cannot be achieved at this proposed location. So the applicant has submitted a land use amendment application that will be heard by council to change the land use zoning of this parcel from residential rural or to residential rural district. So that is something that will be in the works and has to be decided by council. A review of the Alberta wetland inventory indicates that there's no noted wetlands. There are no environmental or historically significant areas or abandoned wells on the quarter section. This application was circulated to required referrals and adjacent landowners. The EID responded with the conditions, the standard conditions for the use of EID water on that property. Pioneer Gas requires that a new gas contract be purchased to supply the yard site on the new subdivision if a natural gas service is required. The applicant will be made aware of this, and when they decide to develop further, they can discuss that with Pioneer Gas. When this RFD was submitted, there were no objections or concerns raised by adjacent landowners. However, recently I have been in discussions with an adjacent landowner regarding the fence line. There is an existing fence line that is not constructed on the property line. And then when I looked into this further, it also appears that the dugout is encroaching on the neighboring property. So although the dugout is not on the proposed subdivision, because the land to be subdivided is, I guess, able to be critiqued at this time, it is something we can look into. So it is recommended by staff that MPC approve the subdivision for residential purposes with the following conditions: that all outstanding property taxes be paid, that if required, the applicant enter into a development agreement with the county, that the applicant supplies copies of utility right-of-ways, easement agreements and/or agreements with affected utilities, that the land use amendment be approved by council, which would change the zoning of the proposed parcel from agriculture general district to residential rural district prior to the finalization of the subdivision. In addition to that, which is not written on your RFD, it is recommended by staff that the encroachment of the dugout be rectified to the satisfaction of the development authority. So we can't guarantee, I guess, based on this photo, that the dugout is encroaching. So we will talk with the applicant and the surveyor and ensure that there is an encroachment. If there is, then it would be recommended that an encroachment agreement be put in place between both landowners. There is an encroachment agreement existing for the pivot that goes over the property line, which you can't see in this photo, but I do have one for that as well, somewhere here. So this is the pivot that encroaches. So there is an existing agreement for that. So our recommendation is, if this is an encroachment, that also be rectified prior to the finalization of the subdivision. In regards to the fence line, fences they do not require a development permit. I did look into the history of this property. I can't tell who the owner of that fence line is. If I look at it as it is now, I would say because it is on the property to the north of the proposed parcel, that it would be their fence. So as far as moving the fence or rectifying any of that, I suppose that's up to MPC to decide how you'd like to deal with that. There is also reserve applicable for this because this is not the first parcel out. Policy POL 10-23 would apply. So the policy states that the determined land value is $10,500 per acre. So it is recommended that money in place of land be provided for an approximate $2,488.50. Thanks.
All right. Lots of information there. Catherine, can you tell me if the adjacent or anybody online wants to speak on this application?
No one has joined the meeting as of yet, and there are no comments in any of the streams.
Thank you, Catherine. MPC, how do you wish to proceed? There are a couple of loose ends on this one. Holly?
Good morning. Just can you explain, was there a house here previously? I'm not sure why there is a dugout, because wouldn't the dugout go with the property? Like I'm just a little not understanding this completely.
That's a good question, because when I received this proposal and it was under 3 acres, I did discuss with the applicant putting that dugout with the residential parcel. However, they didn't want to do that because there is a use for it on the remnant parcel. Exactly what that is, I'm not sure, whether it's for cattle, watering purposes. Actually, that might be what it is, but they didn't want that dugout to be part of the residential parcel.
Holly?
And the parcel above, which runs along that whole north part of that quarter, so that is completely split out and it's a separate owner?
That's correct. The entire north portion of that parcel is separated. And if we talk about the fence line, this yellow is a utility right-of-way. And it looks like that fence line might go, like follow that line, I suppose.
Neil?
It's a lot of conditions, but if they sort their way through them, I'll make this motion.
And there are a couple options that Maria didn't put in there, so how are you feeling about the options?
I will have to leave that up with the dugout between the two landowners, as long as they have their agreement there and it's tied up legally. We're okay.
And the fence line, what's the other one?
That's between the two landowners. Wherever they want the fence is their business, isn't it? We can't make them take a fence out and put in a new one if they don't want to. Or can we?
Yeah, we can. Now is the time. The adjacent landowner made a phone call to me, and now is the time that you clean up your act when you make an application. So I would like to see that we put in a condition that the fence line be corrected.
Okay, I'll add that to my motion.
Okay, thank you. Holly? Oh, Matt.
Yeah, I think the fence line's an interesting one. I would have leaned towards the original sentiment expressed by Councillor Johnson that you leave the fence to the neighbors. Does the fence need to be, so as part of the motion, is it the fence needs to be moved and reinstalled? What if the applicant would prefer to just remove the fence altogether, not have the expense? If it is moved, what's the cost share? These are all good things to leave up to neighbors to sort out amongst themselves. I'm not sure, Maria, if you have a recommendation in regards to the fence line. Like, is there a condition in Councillor Johnson's motion that requires the neighbors to address the fence issue before the subdivision is finalized, but leaves the details up to them to sort out? In my mind, it's a civil matter.
Okay. Interesting, because that's not what you suggested the other day, so thank you. Maria?
I would agree with that, specifically because we do not have development permits for fences. If that is something that council would want to look at,
No, it's not.
that's something that could happen. I think there is some information, or I guess fences could be mutually beneficial. There could be cost-sharing agreements which happen between landowners. So much like Matt had said, if the applicant just wanted to remove the fence, then they would be essentially going on land that's not theirs. To remove a fence, I'm not sure who uses that fence. So I do think that it is neighboring landowners' responsibility to ensure they know where their property lines are and they don't cross them, regardless of where a fence is. I think it's a little bit tricky to put conditions of moving fences on a subdivision.
And ask if he's changed his mind.
I thought I was right the first time, so I have changed my mind.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I thought I was too, Neil, so. Holly?
But to protect both parties, would you say that any fence either needs to be on the property line or agreed to by both parties? Like, I don't quite understand the fence issue, but it appears that we do have one. Kelly, from the call you got, do we have a fence issue?
It's a potential, that's all. So it's been in the wrong place for many years. The owners bought the property knowing it was in the wrong place, but because there was no financing probably, they didn't have to have a real property report, so that didn't have to be repaired or fixed, right? Futuristic, that's going to be required, but making it a civil matter, that's between them.
But we have a responsibility just to say fences should be on the property line unless otherwise agreed to by both parties. I think that we're protecting both landowners by saying that, which is just following. I'm just want to be sensitive that if someone is upset, now is the time to help with that if that's needed. And I'm not sure it is.
And I'm not suggesting that's, I mean, they made the call to me, but they just wanted it to be corrected now for future sale, possibly. Maria?
I think that there's definitely merit to correcting things that we're able to correct, like the dugout. Having an encroachment agreement on both properties makes future owners aware that there is an encroachment, and then they can buy that property based on all the facts. Dugout, like in this case, that dugout has been there before before the aerial photos, so it's been there for a while. It was constructed prior to the land use bylaw, most probably. But now, because this subdivision is happening, we have the ability to change it. So the owner can either decide they want to fill in a portion of it, or put the agreement in place, or I guess MPC can decide what they think is the best way. This dugout does not meet the current land use bylaw because it is encroaching on the property line. Again, fences are outside of the land use bylaw, and so it's a little bit more, I guess, we don't know the thought process behind why that fence was constructed the way it was. Future owners, maybe they liked where that was at that time. It's really tricky. However, the landowners need to make sure that they know where the property lines are and don't cross it regardless of where fences are. I think I'm repeating myself, sorry.
It's all good. We do have a motion.
Could we review the motion?
Yeah, it's all as recommended by staff. So no additional, Matt.
Well, and to be clear, my understanding is, looking at the RFD, the additional condition of an encroachment agreement for the pond is a condition of subdivision as recommended by staff. Is that correct, Maria?
Okay. Adina?
I just wonder, because the property was bought before and the fence line was already in the wrong place, and they knew that, has there been some contact between neighbors to fix that already? Since it's been known that it's in the wrong place for some time, right? So have they tried to work that out amongst themselves at all? Do we know?
They're not here to speak to that. Maria, do you have the answer?
I did put the landowners in contact with each other. I haven't been able to hear from either of them whether they've discussed, but they both are aware of the situation and have each other's contacts.
Okay. Moving along, I think we have a motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Questions? All in favor of Neil's motion? That is carried. Thank you for walking us through that, Quagmire. Moving on to other business, is there anything to discuss? Any post-agenda items? There were none. Any reason for in camera? Seeing none. Catherine, do we have any questions in the queue?
No questions.
Okay, I'll adjourn the MPC meeting at 10:21.